Sword and swordsmanship are tremendously vital to my style, to my life, my way of understanding the martial arts.
What started as a small challenge between two martial arts legends quickly spiraled into one of the most shocking and controversial fights in history.
At a right age, you can impress upon them a good value system, and that's so important, I think, in martial arts and our responsibilities as martial artists.
Steven Seagal faced Frank Dux in a battle that no one could have predicted. But what happened in that ring left even the experts speechless. And it's not what most people think. The outcome shocked the martial arts world.
When you do evil, the top of the sword will cut you. When you do good, the bottom edge will serve for you and cut for you. It is the sword of justice.
And sparked rumors that still swirl today. You won't believe the twists that unfolded. Two legends, one challenge. In the late 1990s, Los Angeles was not only the heart of the entertainment industry, but also a vibrant center for martial arts. Countless dojos, gyms, and training spaces hosted instructors and fighters from around the world. The city was a place where styles collided, where traditional practices met modern adaptations, and where reputations could be made or broken through whispered stories in martial circles. Within this environment, two names carried particular weight: Steven Seagal and Frank Dux. Both men were well known, both were respected in different ways, and both carried a degree of controversy that fueled endless debates among practitioners and fans. Steven Seagal had already built a name that extended far beyond the mat. Standing over 6 feet 4 inches tall, his physical presence was as imposing as his calm demeanor. Unlike many Hollywood action stars, his martial arts background was not an invention of film studios but a lived reality. Seagal had spent years in Japan, training in Aikido, until he achieved high ranks. He became the first foreigner to operate an Aikido dojo in Japan, an accomplishment that alone gave him a reputation for authenticity in a community that often questioned Western practitioners. When he eventually transitioned to work in the film industry, his knowledge and skill set him apart. His action choreography emphasized control, redirection, and precise joint locks rather than the flashy high kicks made popular by other stars. By the late 1990s, Seagal's Hollywood career was established, yet debates remained about how well his cinematic success reflected his effectiveness in real combat. Frank Dux, by contrast, was a figure shrouded in mystery. His story gained international attention after the release of Bloodsport in 1988, a film said to be inspired by his real-life experiences in an underground fighting tournament known as the Kumite. The closing captions of the film claimed Dux held astonishing records: 56 consecutive knockouts, the fastest recorded knockout, and more than 300 victories. To admirers, these numbers turned him into a living legend. To skeptics, they represented exaggeration at best and fabrication at worst. Dux himself asserted that he had been trained by Senzo Tanaka in the art of Koga Yamabushi ninjutsu, learning methods of stealth, speed, and precision. Yet evidence for many of his claims was never independently verified, leaving him in a strange position, celebrated by popular culture but regarded with suspicion by parts of the martial arts community. Placed side by side, Seagal and Dux represented two very different archetypes. One was the disciplined professional, grounded in a structured tradition and verifiable history. The other was the shadowy fighter, with stories of secret tournaments and feats that seemed too extraordinary to be real. Their reputation stirred arguments wherever martial artists gathered. Enthusiasts speculated endlessly about what would happen if Seagal's refined Aikido met Dux's unpredictable strikes. Would structure defeat speed? Would proven technique hold against a man who claimed experience in battles hidden from the world? What began as a private conversation between these two men unexpectedly became an event. In the martial arts world of Los Angeles, where rumors spread quickly and egos often clashed, the idea of them stepping onto the same mat was electric. It was not a public spectacle, nor was it designed to be shared with fans through cameras or magazines. It was supposed to be private, a test of skill witnessed only by a select few. Yet the memory of that moment, once it took place, would linger for decades as one of the most talked about encounters in martial arts history. Let's tell you what rules were set to ensure this showdown stayed respectful, yet intense enough to settle a debate. The rules and the first exchange. Before the contest began, clear conditions were set to ensure that the sparring would remain controlled yet meaningful. A senior instructor, trusted for his impartiality, acted as referee and explained the boundaries. The fight would be conducted under full contact sparring rules, allowing for real strikes and grappling. However, two critical restrictions were introduced: no head strikes and no deliberate intent to cause injury. The bout would continue until the allotted time expired or one participant achieved a decisive advantage. Both Steven Seagal and Frank Dux agreed without hesitation, signaling their readiness to test skill rather than brute force. When the two men squared off, silence fell over the room. Unlike the noisy atmosphere of a public competition, the audience here was composed of seasoned martial artists who had come not for entertainment, but for insight. Each movement was watched closely, not for spectacle, but for what it revealed about strategy and execution. Seagal stood tall, his posture upright, his arms positioned to intercept rather than attack. His calmness radiated across the mat, suggesting a readiness to wait for the right moment rather than rush. Across from him, Dux adopted a looser stance. He shifted lightly on the balls of his feet, his body language showing mobility and readiness to strike from multiple angles. The first moments of engagement were marked by tension as both circled, testing distance and timing. Seagal's eyes locked on Dux's torso, a place that often betrayed intention more clearly than the face. Dux, in contrast, stayed in motion, feinting lightly to provoke a reaction. For nearly 10 seconds, neither man committed fully, each calculating the other's rhythm and preparing to exploit the first opportunity. Dux moved first, firing a quick jab, followed by a low kick aimed toward Seagal's shin. The taller fighter allowed the kick to glance off, stepping forward at the same time and placing a palm against Dux's chest to check his advance. It was not a strike intended to harm, but a measured action to control space. They broke apart and reset, eyes locked once more. Moments later, Dux launched another sequence, combining a jab to the torso with a hook directed at Seagal's side. This time, Seagal raised his left arm to block and simultaneously caught the hook with his right hand. With a turn of his body, he transitioned into a joint lock that forced Dux to bend slightly under the pressure. The maneuver displayed Seagal's signature ability to redirect energy and apply leverage. Yet Dux was quick to adapt. He twisted free almost instantly, regaining his stance before Seagal could capitalize further. The exchanges continued in this manner. Dux attempted to disguise his true intentions with feints, flashing low kicks before snapping strikes toward Seagal's ribs, only to retreat quickly. His attacks demonstrated speed and unpredictability. Seagal, however, maintained patience, refusing to be drawn into reckless counters. He held the center of the mat, forcing Dux to work harder, waiting for the opportunity to impose control. These opening rounds revealed the contrast between the two men. Dux relied on agility, deception, and fast combinations to keep his opponent guessing. Seagal trusted his composure, using positioning and timing to neutralize bursts of offense. Neither gained a decisive upper hand, but the room grew more charged with each exchange. Observers understood they were watching a contest between two very different philosophies of combat, one explosive and unpredictable, the other calm and rooted in redirection. As the match intensified, can you guess who began to land the cleaner shots and push the other to adapt? Speed against control. As the fight progressed beyond its opening exchanges, the contrast between Frank Dux and Steven Seagal became even clearer. Dux relied on bursts of energy, stepping forward with sharp body shots and quick strikes that showed both speed and precision. His attacks came in rapid sequences, forcing Seagal to respond under pressure. On several occasions, he managed to land clean punches to Seagal's torso and sides, subtle reminders that his offense was capable of breaking through the taller man's defenses. Each strike may not have been powerful enough to end the match, but they accumulated as evidence of his ability to penetrate Seagal's reach. Seagal, however, refused to be unsettled. His responses were measured, calculated, and rooted in the principles that defined his Aikido background. When Dux pressed forward with flurries, Seagal absorbed the shots, adjusting his footing and positioning to minimize their effect. He rarely countered immediately, but instead focused on shutting down momentum. When Dux attempted another low kick or a quick jab-hook combination, Seagal angled his body away, redirected the strike with his forearm, or reached for Dux's wrist to turn the movement into a moment of control. These maneuvers did not always score visibly in the eyes of the observers, but they slowed Dux's rhythm and forced him to work harder each time he advanced. The back and forth created a rhythm where neither man could fully dominate. Dux's bursts of speed provided excitement, while Seagal's composure grounded the contest. To those watching, the fight began to feel less like a performance and more like a genuine experiment in contrasting philosophies. Dux thrived on unpredictability, testing angles and hoping to slip through gaps. Seagal relied on structure, using patience and timing to neutralize aggression. Their skills collided in ways that made the match tense and captivating without needing any cinematic flair. A subtle psychological battle ran alongside the physical one. Both men understood that showing frustration or fatigue would be a signal of weakness. Dux, even when redirected or caught in brief joint locks, bounced back quickly, never allowing his expression to betray irritation. Seagal, even when struck cleanly, kept his face composed, his breathing steady, and his eyes locked on his opponent. The longer the contest continued, the more difficult it became to maintain that mask of calm. Sweat darkened their GIs, and their movements, while still sharp, began to carry the weight of exertion. Pauses between exchanges grew slightly longer, each fighter using those moments to recover while pretending to remain as fresh as at the start. The small audience, composed of martial artists and professionals who lived this world daily, recognized what they were witnessing. This was not a carefully choreographed duel for entertainment, nor was it a tournament fight governed by points and applause. It was a genuine contest of skill between two men who had built reputations in very different ways. Every exchange carried meaning, not because of flashy techniques, but because each action revealed something about control, strategy, and endurance. The fight had reached a balance. Dux's offense kept the pace quick and unpredictable, but Seagal's steadiness prevented any decisive breakthrough. The spectators leaned forward, knowing the outcome would not be decided by ordinary exchanges. Something more dramatic would be required. either a mistake born of fatigue or a perfectly timed maneuver. With exhaustion setting in, came decisive mistake that would finally tip the scales. The final minutes. As the bout entered its closing stage, fatigue had begun to show in both fighters. Their movements, while still sharp, carried the weight of endurance rather than fresh energy. Sweat covered their uniforms, and the pauses between their exchanges grew slightly longer. But neither man gave any indication of stepping back. The atmosphere in the room thickened with anticipation, as everyone present sensed that the outcome would soon be decided. This was the moment when experience, composure, and timing mattered more than raw strength or speed. Frank Dux was the first to commit in these final moments. Understanding that a close contest could be argued endlessly, he surged forward with an aggressive sequence designed to overwhelm. His combinations came fast, low kicks aimed at Seagal's legs, followed by quick jabs and hooks that forced the taller man to give ground. Each strike carried urgency, as if Dux intended to end the fight decisively rather than allow the clock to decide. For a brief period, Seagal appeared to be on the defensive, stepping back to absorb the pressure while carefully monitoring the rhythm of his opponent. The audience leaned forward, watching as Dux pressed his advantage. He had managed to back Seagal toward the edge of the mat, an unusual sight given the larger man's control of distance earlier in the fight. With another kick and a sharp hook, Dux seemed poised to complete the sequence with a finishing blow. Yet, it was in this very moment that Seagal's composure revealed itself most clearly. Rather than continuing to retreat, he shifted his timing. With a step forward instead of back, Seagal closed the gap just as Dux committed to his next strike. His left hand clamped around Dux's wrist, while his right pressed against the shoulder, redirecting the momentum downward. The movement was fluid, free of unnecessary force, and executed with precision. Using his weight and balance, Seagal rotated his body and guided Dux to the mat in a controlled takedown. The sound of Dux hitting the canvas echoed across the dojo, marking a decisive shift in the contest. Dux tried to recover quickly, but Seagal was already transitioning. He pinned his opponent with firm positioning, trapping an arm and shoulder while using his knee and body weight to secure control. Dux twisted, rolled, and attempted to escape, but the leverage was not in his favor. The lock was secure enough to prevent freedom, while still honoring the agreement not to cause injury. The referee, recognizing that the position left no realistic chance for reversal and that the allotted time had nearly expired, stepped in to call the match. Seagal immediately released his hold and extended a hand to his opponent. Dux accepted, and the two men stood facing each other, both exhausted, both drenched in sweat, but neither displaying hostility. A brief nod passed between them, signaling mutual recognition of the effort and skill each had brought to the mat. The audience responded with respectful applause, not for theatrics, but for the authenticity of the contest. The referee's word was clear. Steven Seagal had secured the victory with a decisive final maneuver. Yet, even with Seagal declared the victor, why do debates about who truly won still continue to this day? Let's tell you. Legacy of a secret match. When the referee declared Steven Seagal the winner, the result seemed clear in the moment. He had executed the final takedown with authority and controlled the match until time expired. Yet, over the years, the debate surrounding the encounter has persisted, largely because of how the fight unfolded and the way its story was later retold. Unlike professional tournaments that rely on judges, scoring systems, or video evidence, this sparring session existed only in the memories of those present. There were no cameras to capture the exchanges, no reporters to record blow-by-blow accounts, and no official documentation beyond the referee's final call. Its legacy has been shaped entirely by word of mouth. Within martial arts circles, the story began spreading quietly. Some who attended emphasized Seagal's composure, his ability to dictate space, and the smoothness of his final takedown. Others pointed out that Dux had landed several clean strikes and forced Seagal onto the defensive at critical moments. Each retelling highlighted different aspects, leading to varied interpretations of what had truly happened. Over time, these perspectives created a split. One side viewing Seagal as the undeniable victor, the other insisting that Dux had done enough to claim moral ground. For Seagal, the fight offered more than just a private win. It was a demonstration that his martial arts background extended far beyond carefully staged film choreography. His critics often questioned whether his cinematic techniques translated into genuine effectiveness. The North Hollywood match gave him an opportunity, in front of knowledgeable practitioners, to validate his skill in a live contest. By finishing the bout with precision and control, he reaffirmed his identity as a legitimate martial artist, not just a Hollywood action star. For Dux, the fight carried a different kind of meaning. Despite losing officially, he managed to challenge a recognized master and push him to the edge. His reputation was built on mystery, with claims of extraordinary victories in underground tournaments that many doubted. In this match, he proved that his speed, precision, and unpredictability were real enough to trouble an opponent with Seagal's stature. Even though he was taken down in the final moments, his performance demonstrated that his abilities were not entirely myth. For some, this alone was enough to preserve his credibility. What made the duel truly memorable, however, was not the verdict, but the dynamic between the two men. Their encounter symbolized a clash of philosophies. Seagal embodied discipline, structure, and patience, while Dux represented improvisation, speed, and daring. Both forced the other to adapt, and both showed resilience under pressure. The respect they exchanged afterward underscored that the fight was less about proving superiority and more about testing skill in a pure environment. Because the match remained hidden from public view, it grew into legend. The absence of footage allowed imagination and bias to shape its memory. Supporters of Seagal point to the clean finish, while admirers of Dux emphasize his ability to land strikes and keep the fight competitive. The truth lies somewhere between, in the acknowledgement that both men delivered performances worthy of their reputations. The legacy of North Hollywood rests not in declaring a single champion, but in recognizing what the fight represented. It was a rare moment when two martial artists from vastly different backgrounds shared the mat, pushed each other to the limit, and walked away with mutual acknowledgement. In the end, the match became less about who won and more about the respect earned, the philosophy displayed, and the enduring debates that continue to keep the story alive. But what do you think? Was Seagal the clear winner? Or did Dux prove more than people admit? Drop your thoughts in the comments.